Ipakita ang tunay na estado ng ating bansa. Ilahad ang mga pinakabagong balita at pangyayari sa ating bayan. Ipaalam sa taong bayan ang katotohanan at ipaliwanag ang mga hakbang na ginagawa ng pamahalaan upang manatiling payapa at maiangat ang pamumuhay ng bawat Pilipino. Mula sa Pangulo ng Republika ng Pilipinas, Mayor Rodrigo Roa Duterte, ito ang Talk to the People.
So we begin with, can you give your report, joint presentation of the Economic Development Center. I'll give this to first to Secretary Dominguez, then to Secretary to Sani, you have the floor.
President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, distinguished members of the Cabinet, good evening. I would like to start by saying that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine does not involve us directly. However, because neither Russia nor Ukraine is a major trading partner of ours. Instead, the Philippine economy will likely be collateral damage. It is as if we are hit by a ricocheting bullet. These indirect shocks are likely to be felt through four major channels. Is there a slide? Four major channels. The commodity market, the financial market, investments, and the impact on our fiscal health. First, oil and food prices are expected to go up as Russia is the largest exporter of natural gas and wheat, trigo, okay? While Ukraine is the fourth largest exporter of corn. As the conflict continues, Ukraine and Russia's main trading partners, predominantly the European Union, will look to trade with other countries such as US and China, where we are buying both wheat and corn, thereby pushing up the prices of commodities in these markets as well. Second, the conflict will also likely cause a surge in interest rates or cost of borrowing, which was already expected to go up even prior to the crisis because of the US Fed's tightening monetary policies. The conflict will increase the perception of risk in investments. Third, investments are likely to decline or at least be on hold in the face of uncertainty, which may cause investors from the West to be more conservative or postpone their planned investments. Once sanctions are imposed, it will take a long time for investor and consumer confidence to return to normal. Lastly, all the aforesaid economic impacts will likely require government support to protect our vulnerable citizens and the critical sectors most affected by the crisis, and this will stretch our budget even further. However, I would like to emphasize that we do not expect this crisis to last very long. However, there may be some lingering effects. We have seen similar crises in the past, such as the Gulf War in 1990, the Asian financial crisis in 1997, the oil price shock of 2008, and also the first Russia-Ukraine conflict in 2014. And we have weathered all of these crises very well. We have experienced crises whose effects were more severe and direct to the economy, such as the Asian financial crisis in 1997 and the global financial crisis in 2008. This crisis lasted much longer, and yet we were able to get through them. Based on these experiences, we are confident that we have the tools and the preparation necessary to help our people through this crisis. The following presentation of Secretary Chua will outline the Economic Development Cluster's recommendations to address these potential shocks. This crisis may increase prices across several sectors and thereby cause our inflation rate to breach our target, but with the measures that we discussed at the Economic Development Cluster and which Secretary Chua will present, we are confident that we will be able to keep the inflation within our target range of 2 to 4% and maintain our growth path of 7 to 9% this year. So can I ask Carl to go through the details?
Okay, thank you very much, Secretary Dominguez. Good evening, Mr. President and members of the Cabinet. The Economic Development Cluster of Cabinet met this afternoon, and we are proposing 14 measures to alleviate the impact of the crisis on the people. So let me go through each of the 14 items. The first is on the overall economy, is to shift to alert level 1 at the soonest possible time for the entire country and open all the schools for face-to-face learning to increase our domestic economy and offset the external risk. So while we cannot prevent the risk from coming from the global perspective, we can strengthen our domestic economy to provide the people with more jobs and opportunities. The second one on gasoline and diesel, as you know, the price of gasoline and diesel has went up so much, no? So we are proposing the following interventions. The first is to increase fuel subsidy program for public utility vehicles from the already announced 2.5 billion to 5 billion. So we will double the subsidy. And the first tranche will be given in March and the second tranche in April. Number 2 is to continue working with the private firms on promotional discount of oil companies up to 1 to 4 peso per liter discount. So this will help alleviate additional for the jeepneys and the other PUVs. Number 3 is to increase our buffer stock of petroleum from the current 30 to 45 days. This will require a law that we can work with Congress. The fourth is to provide additional fuel vouchers for agricultural producers, and we will increase the budget from 500 million to 1.1 billion. The first tranche we will give in March, the second tranche in April, and by that time we will have additional revenues to fund these subsidies. Going further, number 5 is to promote energy conservation everywhere in the private sector or in government offices. Number 6 is to suspend or remove the pass-through fees that are being charged by LGUs, industrial parks, or subdivisions for deliveries, for truckings, and so on. Number 7 is to fully implement the service contracting, the subsidy that we give to, for instance, the buses to operate, and to expand it to all public transport routes. Number 8 is to promote e-vehicles and expand access to charging stations. And number 9 is to aggressively promote active transport, including bicycles. Now, many people are using LPG or liquefied petroleum gas. What we propose is to increase our buffer stock from the current 7 to 15 days. So when we expand the buffer stock, we can ensure more adequate supply and meet demand in case there is a global shortage. And this will require a new law. The next one is on coal. We use coal to power, I think, half of our power generation. And we propose to expand supply and reduce price as a result by reducing the most favored nation or MFN tariff rate, which is currently 7% to 0, temporarily until December 2022. So the effect people will feel is pass-through of lower power charges, and to maintain our buffer stock at the current 30 days minimum because we have sufficient inventory. Let me now go to the fifth recommendation for electricity. We propose as gasoline and diesel alike to promote energy conservation including the use of sensor technology for energy saving. So once we are, for instance, overlighted, we can cut down the use of light. The next is to stagger the increase in generation charge. And I understand the power companies have agreed to this in the report of Secretary Cusi. And then number 3 and 4 is to allow foreign ownership in microgrid, solar, wind, and tidal energy. This would require revision of the IRR. This will allow more players to come in and to offset our need for more coal, which is already 3 or 4 times more expensive. And now let me go to the food side. Number 6 is our support to the overall agriculture sector, because one of the transmission, apart from energy, Mr. President, is the food. So we will implement vigorously the Plant program, Part 2, subject to the availability of funds, and provide targeted fertilizer vouchers to farmers, and to discuss with our bilateral partners on possible additional supply of fertilizers, which is needed for production in agriculture. Let me now go to number 7, which is rice. The Department of Agriculture has agreed to closely monitor rice inflation, and the National Food Authority to closely monitor the buffer stock. We will also help the local government units increase their buffer stock, so to ensure we have adequate supply in each province. And the Land Bank of the Philippines, LBP, and the Development Bank of the Philippines will provide concessional loans or funding for working capital, particularly in the procurement of post-harvest facilities and warehouses. We will also accelerate the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund implementation and other parts of the National Rice Program in the budget so that we increase local production. Now, should the local production not be enough, we will temporarily import to keep prices low and make sure we have adequate rice for all Filipinos. So we propose to facilitate the continuous release of the sanitary and phytosanitary import clearances, especially for the shipment that will arrive in the lean season of July. Kasi yung gitna ng April and August is the October rather is the lean season. While waiting for the harvest, we may need more import. And we propose to expand supply and reduce price by extending the 35% tariff rate until December 2022. Mr. President, you have issued an executive order for this, but it will expire in June so that we maintain a good supply of rice and keep the prices low. We propose its extension. Let me now go to number 8 on corn. Corn is important as feed for poultry, for livestock. So we propose to expand supply and reduce the price by lowering the most favored nation tariff rate to 5% in quota and 15% out quota, and allow a minimum access volume where they can avail of the lower tariff rate of 4 million metric ton until the end of the year. So this is temporary to ensure that we have adequate feed so that we can buy chicken and pork in a cheaper price. And we will import more feed wheat and produce more cassava because these are substitutes for feeds for chicken and for pigs, for instance. Number 9 on pork, we still have the African swine fever, but we are slowly recovering. We propose that to ensure a lower price of pork and adequate supply, we extend the lower tariff rate of 15% in quota and 25% out quota with a MAV or minimum access volume of 200 metric ton until December 2022. Presently, Mr. President, may EO tayo until May, but we deem it is necessary to extend this to ensure lower price for the people and adequate supply. We also propose to accelerate the release of imported pork from the cold storage. So marami pong na-import na pork, but we have to release it for the people's consumption, especially outside NCR. We propose also to pass the livestock and dairy bill now pending in the Senate kasi ito yung tutulong talaga sa hog raisers and to increase our dairy production. And finally, to remove all the non-tariff barriers that prevent the smooth or proper importation of pork. Number 10 is on fish. We have a big shortage of fish. So we propose the issuance of a CNI, or a certificate for the necessity to import small pelagic fish from the ocean tulad ng galunggong from the second quarter to the fourth quarter. Our estimate is we need it to fill an additional 140,000 metric ton because we have a supply gap of 200,000 metric ton. So yung na-release na import allocation is 60,000. So we need to increase this. So the end result is adequate supply so that the people can have lower price for fish, and also to remove all other non-tariff barriers. Let me now go to number 11 on chicken. We propose, bilisan natin, accelerate the release of the sanitary and phytosanitary clearances from the National Meat Inspection Service, cold storage warehouses, so that we can increase yung inventory and supply. Kasi hindi pa tayo umaabot sa pre-COVID-19 pandemic level. So mayroon pa tayong shortage sa chicken. And the people who eat chicken, for instance, Chicken Joy, nafe-feel nila tong crunch and the higher price. Number 12 po sa sugar, we have to address a court temporary restraining order that prevent us from pursuing yung sugar import natin. And the economic team has proposed that we allow direct importation by the industrial users, yung mga food manufacturers, beverage manufacturer, on a 1-to-1 ratio. So they will buy 50% from the domestic to help our farmers, pero kulang po yan. So we have to import the extra that is needed so that we can help our food producers also. Number 13 on wheat, this is needed for bread production, for pasta, spaghetti, is to expand our sources of wheat, and India is offering to provide, for instance, an additional supply of wheat. We have a project, yung Pinoy Tasty Project, so that we promote and buy local bread na masarap naman, and we promote non-wheat flour substitute, such as yung Sagip Nutri flour na gawa sa cassava, sweet potato, mongo, and banana flour. All of these are meant to ensure that we have adequate bread at affordable prices. And finally, Mr. President, since itong renewable energy and agriculture napakahalaga sa atin, we propose that we include it in the Strategic Investment Priority Plan under the Board of Investment para mabigyan ng sapat na attention, may investors na pumasok para i-increase yung supply ng ating pagkain at yung energy. So, Mr. President, this is the recommendation of the Economic Development Cluster to alleviate the impact of the Russia-Ukraine crisis on the people, notably yung pagtaas ng presyo ng pagkain, kuryente, gasolina at diesel. Yan lang po. Maraming salamat.
Carl, given the time that we are here for the time being, I'd like to know if we could come up immediately with the enabling law sa recommendations mo.
Mr. President, in terms of the subsidies, we have it already in the budget, so we will implement it immediately. In terms of the tariff reduction po, since Congress is not in session, we will submit a request for the issuance of an executive order. And there are dalawa lang po na kailangan ng batas. We will prepare it immediately so that Congress can consider it immediately when they return in May for session.
Yes,
we will work hard on this. Thank you.
We have a long haul sa walang trabaho. Days that Congress is not functioning. I wonder if we can have that the laws that you want to be enacted to support your recommendation. Yun lang ang ano ko doon. Given the time that we stay here, that we can act on it on our own. Baka lalampas na yun sa kabila. And I just hope that they would, read your study very carefully.
Mr. President, if the situation escalates, we could recommend a special session if mag-escalate po.
Mas mabuti pa Pag-isipan na lang natin yan. Bingbong siguro, will. Tignan mo daw, Bong, para mapaisa natin. Para, alam mo, so there's gonna be an election. At after that, there will be euphoria. Then nobody's really focusing on anything except yung pagpalit ng tao, kung ano, reorganization dito, changing of the guards. So that would eat a lot of time. And itong recommendations ng NEDA is really vital to keep the economy humming for a few months. More so that there is, I think, baski na mahinto ito, the fractured economies already in Europe would affect us more or less by next year. Nandiyan na yan. Hindi nga towards the end of the year. So,
We will just coordinate with
prangkahan na lang natin yung Congress. This is intended really for the welfare of the people. If you have the time, sit with us and we can discuss it. Otherwise, you're on your own. Kung hindi ibaliwala ninyo itong pinag-aralan na ng outgoing administration. So, salamat. Is that all?
That would be all. If you
Salamat.
approve, we can, if you approve, Mr. President, we can.
Secretary Kose, Chua, Kosiya.
Nasama na Mayor yung report namin sa economic cluster.
Sabay-sabay na yun.
Sabay-sabay na po, pati agriculture. and,
Then we have the critical contribution of Secretary Duque.
Good evening, Mr. President.
Yes.
And ES Medi Aldea, Senator Bongo, and fellow members of the Cabinet. At higit po sa lahat, ang ating pong mga minamahal na kababayan. Magandang gabi po at muli ako po ay mag-uulat ukol sa pinakabagong updates sa ating pong COVID response. At yan po ang first slide natin para sa ating pong usual COVID updates. Gaya ng amin ay ulat, tayo po ay magbibigay na mula ngayon araw ng weekly updates na lamang po, Mr. President, hindi na po daily reporting of case counts. At para po sa linggo ng March 1 to 7, ngayong taon may naidagdag na 6,207 na bagong kaso o katumbas po nito ay 899 daily average cases at mas mababa po ito ng 31% kumpara sa naitalang kaso para sa February 22 to 28 na 9,148 cases at meron pong 1,306 daily average cases. At sa 6,297 na karagdagan kaso sa linggong ito, yung pong 1,479 ay mula sa NCR, 836 sa Region 4A at 775 sa Region 6. Tatlo naman po ang naidagdag na severe and critical cases sa talaan habang 615 ang bilang ng mga karagdagan verified deaths para sa linggong ito. Ang current cumulative case fatality rate ay nasa 1.56%, mababa po kumpara sa global fatality rate ng 2.04%. Ang ating pong recoveries ay umabot naman sa 9,954 para sa linggong ito at sa kabuuan 98.7% ang cumulative recovery rate ng bansa. Patuloy po na bumababa ang ating national utilization rates na nasa 18% para sa non-ICU bed utilization rate at 26% naman para sa ICU beds. Out of the 6,572 total admissions at the national level, 16.1% lamang ng mga ito ay severe at critical admissions. At panghuli, ang ating pong national 7-day moving average positivity rate ay bumaba at ito po yung kasalukuyan 4.2% ditong February 28 to March 6, habang ang ating pong daily RT-PCR testing output ay kasalukuyang nasa 24,219 tests kada araw. Lahat po itong mga metrics na ito ay patuloy na bumababa, Mr. President. And next slide, ito lamang po ang ating national epi curve na kung saan muli magpapakita ng pagbaba ng ating po mga kaso. Kung saan gaya ng naunang nabanggit, meron po tayong 900 more or less average daily cases ayon sa onset ng symptoms ng ating naitala noong March 1 to 7 at mas mababa po ito ng mga 30% sa ating average 1,306 cases noong po February 22 to 28. Sa NCR naman, mayroon 211 average daily cases ayon sa onset ng symptoms at mas mababa po ng 26% kumpara sa ating average noong 286 noong February 22 to 28. Ang mababang trend ng mga kaso ay makikita rin po sa the rest of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Itong next slide, maganda po ito, mapakita kung ano po ang ating estado kumpara naman sa mga ibang bansa ng Southeast Asia. Next slide. Ito, Mr. President, makikita rito, yung Philippines, tayo po ang meron ng pinakamababa ng pagdating po sa daily new confirmed COVID-19 cases per million people as of 8.82 na lang po tayo. Samantalang tingnan nyo po, nagliparan na Singapore ay 3,000 plus per million population. Ang Vietnam naman, 1,300 thereabouts. Malaysia, 845. Tayo na po ang pinakamababa dito sa slide na ito makikita. At syempre naman po, Mr. President, pinagdadasal din natin na yung mga kaso ng mga bansang ito ay bumaba rin for regional security natin, health security. At yan po ang makikita natin, Mr. President, na maayos po yung atin pangangasiwa. Nagpapasalamat po tayo sa lahat po ng mga tumulong sa inyo pong leadership at ng inyo pong IATF ay maganda po ang ating mga numero at patuloy na bumababa. At ganoon pa man, tayo po ay mas handa na tumugon kung sakasakaling knock on the wood, Mr. President, wag na sanang tumaas pa ulit ang ating mga kaso.
Sir,
Yes, Mr. President.
may itanong lang. I'd like to know what brought the numbers down for us.
There are two sources of protection, Mr. President. Yung ating vaccination was the game changer above all.
Well, no,
Okay.
vaccination, no doubt, these countries can well afford to have it.
Bababa din naman yung kanilang kaso. Kasi nauna lang naman tayo na nag-spike noong January, and then our cases started to go down until today. In fact, our reported cases for today sa 700 plus na lang. This is the 5th straight day that we have reported below 1,000 cases per day. So the next reason, Mr. President, is the protection from natural infection, yung natural immunity. Tandaan niyo, Mr. President, we have had about 5 surges already, including the most recent, which is Omicron. And this means marami na rin pong na-infect na ating pong mga kababayan. But luckily, karamihan naman po na infection natin mild. Yung iba nga asymptomatic. And both, in fact, account for about 92 to 94% of all our cases.
Kasi in terms of resources, money, we cannot even have to what Singapore has. Pero makita mo, disiplinado rin yung, they're a disciplined society. I mean, more or less better than the others, including the Philippines. Everybody knows that. Malaysia, never mind about Vietnam because wala masyado tayong grasp sa ano nila. Tataka ako, bakit ang Pilipinas na pinakababa?
Sir, ang isang differentiator natin compared to many of these countries, I should like to believe, is our very good compliance to minimum public health standards, yung masking ng mga Pilipino.
Yes.
Sumusunod talaga, Mr. President. Hindi
Well,
katulad ng mga iba, ay medyo talagang, lalo na nung mataas na yung mga vaccination rates nila, they just threw caution to the wind. Uh-huh. And so I think that is one distinct difference that we have manifested compared to other countries in Southeast Asia. In fact, kung sa Amerika nga, titignan niyo sir, grabe, ang death nila, 1 million. Compared naman, yung pinakamayaman na, the most powerful militarily. And in terms of science, research and development, they're superior. By and large, wala po tayong kalaban-laban. But
Kaya nga.
tayo naman, ang awa ng Diyos, ang ating mortality rate ay mababa as a 1.5%, which is much lower than the global average of about 2.04%. And not only that, Mr. President, yung atin pong mga kaso ay kumpara sa Amerika at even the Western Europe, no? Ang taas ng kanilang caseload, ang taas ng kanilang
Until now.
deaths. Hanggang ngayon, mataas pa rin, Mr. President. And so far, tayo naman, tingin ko maganda po yung inyong leadership, yung pong weekly reminders to the public, and they have seen consistency in your reminders, and they are appreciative by way of a more disciplined compliance with our minimum public health standards. So ito po yung masking, yung lagi niyo pong paulit-ulit na sinasabi, yung ating pong physical distancing, hand hygiene, and all other non-pharmaceutical interventions, Mr. President. So I think this really makes a huge difference compared to the other countries. But confidently, the other countries in Southeast Asia, kahit na nagpipik silang ganon, bababa din po yan. And I think, para po sa lahat, ang concept of new normal will be the realization that the virus will be here to stay, and we must live with the virus. That's the philosophical underpinning that we will have to realize when we usher in the new normal. Ngayon po, as alert level 1 na tayo, hopefully once the ATF defines more definitively the alert level 0, what does it consist of, by and large, yun pa rin po ang atin overarching consideration. The virus will be here to stay, but we will manage. And we have already tested. Meron na tayong acid test or litmus test in the past surges. No? Delta being the most serious of all surges, Mr. President. This happened sometime in August and September. Sa Omicron naman, talagang nakita naman natin, mabilis lang tumaas, mabilis din bumaba, at karamihan mild. And in fact, our severe critical cases are much, much lower or fewer compared to the Delta, Alpha, and Beta surges. So, pati yung ICU natin, makikita natin, sir, ang baba, low risk utilization rate for our ICU beds and all other bed capacities, mababa din po, Mr. President. So, yan lang po. But can I have the other few more slides just to very briefly go over them para po sa kapakanan ng ating po mga kababayan, Mr. President.
Sige.
Next slide. Tapusin ko lang. Ito na naman, para lang pakita yung prueba na yung ating pong mga metrics na ginagamit, yung growth in cases, as a negative 69 for the Philippines. And then our average daily attack rate is 1 per 100,000 population for a minimal risk classification. Pagka binangga po natin ang average daily attack rate or ADAR and the 2-week growth rate, yan po, minimal. And the rest of the country, lahat, all the regions, no, minimal na po. Ang ating case, ang ating pong health systems capacity, ganun din po. Low risk, minimal to low risk. 19.23%, for our total beds utilization, while ICU utilization is at about 27% thereabouts. Noong pong Biyernes, Mr. President, March 4, ginanap naman ang kauna-unahang Healthy Pilipinas Awards for Healthy Communities. Kasama ng ating mga advocacy partners, kinalala natin ang mga proyekto ng mga local government units sa 7 larangan ng health promotion. Ito po ay ang nutrition and physical activity, environmental health, immunization, substance abuse prevention, mental health, sexual and reproductive health, at violence and injury prevention. At para sa taong ito, dinagdagan po natin ang pang-8 kategorya. Ito yung ating COVID-19 response. Sa kabuuan, meron po tayong 120 na mga entry mula sa iba't ibang LGU sa buong bansa para sa awards. At 40 na inisyatiba ng mga ito ang binigyan natin ng parangal. At taus-puso kami nagpapasalamat sa mga lokal na pamahalaan na patuloy na sumusuporta sa ating pong Healthy Pilipinas campaign. Sa inyong dedikasyon, ating pong napapangalagaan ang kalusugan ng bawat mamamayang Pilipino sa pamamagitan ng pagtataguyod ng healthy communities. And finally, Mr. President, gusto ko lang pong ibahagi sa inyo, next slide, sa kabilang dako naman, ang ating res bakuna kasangga ng BIDA campaign nakatanggap po ng Anvil Award mula po sa Public Relations Society of the Philippines. At nagpapasalamat din po tayo sa lahat ng ating mga healthcare workers, ang mga non-governmental, ang national government agencies, LGUs, civil society organizations and development partners, ang mga katuwang sa pribadong sektor, sa mga volunteers, sa ating po mga kaibigan, sa media, ang ating pong mga taga-suporta, sa kanilang tulong para maisakatuparan ang COVID-19 National Deployment and Vaccination Program. Bahagi po silang lahat sa natamong parangal ng DOH sa nagdaan 57th Anvil Awards. Ang parangal na ito po ay hindi lamang para sa DOH, kundi para sa pagsisikap at dedikasyon ng lahat ng ating po mga partners para mabakunahan ng lahat araw o gabi, Sabado o Linggo at mabigyang proteksyon ang bawat pamilyang Pilipino. Marami man ang hinarap at haharapin pa natin balakid at pagsubok, ang isang taon na bakunahan kontra COVID-19 ay patunay sa lakas ng pagkakaisa ng sambayanang Pilipino. Ang tunay na tagumpay ay ang ating pong sama-samang pag-abot ng ating pong target population na mabakunahan. And ika nga, we are only safe and protected if we are all vaccinated. So muli, sa ngalan po ng Department of Health, we deeply express our thanks to everyone who has trusted and and are continuously trusting the vaccine. So maraming salamat po, Mr. President. Handa na po akong sumagot sa inyo po.
Salamat, Secretary Duque. Sana you have something to say?
Yes, Mr. President. The figures are very impressive, but also very impressive is the number of deaths per 100,000. I think the Philippines is only around 55 deaths per 100,000, while Western Europe and the US is over almost 300 deaths per 100,000 people. So we have managed the death rate very, very well. Thank you.
Well, nagtatanong kasi ako kanina because there is no telling that one of these days another vicious virus will visit the country or the world all over. At panibagong ano ito, far different from what we have now. Gusto ko lang malaman na what caused, I said, the numbers to go down because it would come in handy. It would be very important to remember now the days that we allotted the vaccinating program para for the next, just put it at the back of our minds. para malaman, we will not be facing the problem. I mean, it would not be us who would face that problem anymore. But the incoming or whoever wins, dapat malaman nila ito na the good practices of the Philippines. Kaya it's quite impressive that given the population compared to the others, and knowing how, for example, in Malaysia, in Singapore, they are quite strict, Vietnam, in the observance of the law and regulations. Kaya nga ang tatanong, because in the matter of just wearing the mask, you cannot just ignore it in Singapore nor in Malaysia because you really get arrested. Parang pagbatas di yung batas talaga. Dito, I appreciate the decorum adopted by our law enforcement. Parang tinatapik lang na wag mo na lang ulitin. Parang ganun. It's not really important. It is important for the compliance of the law. But it's in the mind na minsan ayaw talaga ng iba. Kung hindi naman kailangan sending him to the police station and detaining him, medyo just for a simple violation like that, I think hindi masyado maganda. So, we have Secretary Galvez now to the updates of vaccination.
Mr. President, Senator Bongo,
Yes.
yes, Bingong Mel Dildea, fellow cabinet members, mga kababayan, magandang gabi po. Next slide, please. As of today, 232.6 million na po ang na-deliver ng various vaccines sa Pilipinas. At meron na po tayo na 136.8 million na po ang ating naiturok sa ating mga kababayan. 63.69 million na Pilipino ang ating fully vaccinated with the primary series. Pero, Mr. President, mababa pa rin po ang total ng boosters po natin na naibigay na humigit kumulang po ng 10.5 million. Sa ating pong pediatric vaccination, meron na po tayong almost 8.6 million doses ang natatanggap ng primary series sa edad na 12 to 17 taong gulang. At ang ating 5 to 11 taong gulang na sektor, meron na po tayo almost 1 million na nabakunahan. At meron po tayo na 3.9 million na doses na dumating at may parating pa po na 6.3 million ngayong buwan. Next slide, please. So dito po, I will show to you yung masyadong dramatic decline ng ating vaccination. And we would like to encourage everybody, talagang medyo bumaba po na talaga. Since November po, nakita po natin sa November, meron po tayong more or less 27 million na administered na doses. But this February, ang ating pong nabakunahan lang po ay 8.7 million. So napakababa po, talagang lubhang bumaba po ang ating output noong February. With the declaration of Alert Level 1, we have been experiencing saturation point in our vaccination centers with only the pediatric sector that dominates our vaccination site. So yung ating mga vaccination site po talagang karamihan po, bakante po. So we will be needing other strategies to gather more vaccines. Next slide, please. Dahil po dito, magsasagawa po ulit tayo ng isang malawakang vaccination days sa this coming March 10 to 12. Ang target po natin dito ay mapalawak ang pagbubooster sa ating eligible sectors from 18 and above. Ito pong hikayatin na bumalik sa na dapat na makareceive ng second dose ay atin pong palalawakin din dahil kasi karamihan po sa mga second dosers natin ay hindi po nakabalik. At ang mga remaining senior citizens and 12 to 17 years old and above ay kailangan po nating makuha po at ang target po natin na 1.8 million to 2 million ang ating mababakunahan po sa ating gaganapin na 3 days na vaccination days. So ang po natin, ang ating pong inclusion population is 12 years and above. And kailangan po natin talaga yung boosted doses at saka yung individual with due second doses. Yung remaining priority group na ito nga po, itong pinupursige namin na Sec Beans at saka na Sec Duque, na makuha po natin yung more or less 3 million at another 3 million sa remaining 12 to 17. Ito po ay gaganapin po natin sa buong region, 16 region and also the Barm region. And it will be simultaneously undertaken nationwide. Next slide please. Para po ma-achieve natin ang ating target sa ating National Vaccination Day number 4, tayo po ay muling nakipag-ugnayan sa Philippine Medical Association and other medical professionals para makilahok at mag-mobilize this coming March 12. We will also involve the pharmacies and clinics, and we will expand more the numbers of those who are volunteering. We will also direct all government agencies and private sector to vaccinate their government employees and economic frontliners para po ito sa boosters at saka po yung ating mga tawag na mga hindi pa po nakababakunahan. We will also launch with the DOLE yung tinatawag po na job fair in the job sites. And also all the LGUs and DOH regional offices and local health centers to do the house-to-house vaccination. At nagkaroon na po tayo ng series of meetings at saka mga trainings para po ibababa po natin from the LGU vaccination site to the different barangay health centers and other, tinatawag nating other, yung ating mga tinatawag na mga volunteers na pwede pong magbahay-bahay. We also ask DepEd and CHED to continue their aggressive vaccination through Back to School program. Ito po ay nakita po natin na talagang nire-recommend po ni Secretary Calchua na talagang magkaroon na po tayo ng back to school. At yung po ang pinaka-ano po namin, na-recommend po namin na ang DepEd at saka CHED ay magkaroon po na tinatawag na back to school na program. And lastly, we requested DTI and other big establishment to give more incentives to those people with boosters. And lastly, we will again encourage our government agencies, our T3 partners, our private sector, LGUs, itong sa mga eco zones, ang ating AP and PNP to participate in our massive vaccination day on March 10 to 12. Magpa-booster na po tayo. That's all, Mr. President, at mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Salamat po, Secretary Galvez. Now it's the turn of Secretary Anyo.
Magandang gabi po, Mr. President, Executive Secretary Salvador Medjaldea, Senator Bongo, fellow public servants, mga kababayan, magandang gabi. Unang-una po, ang aking iuulat ay ang ating ginagawang granular lockdown nationwide under Alert Level 1 at Alert Level 2. Sa patuloy po na pagbaba ng kaso at sa pagpapatupad ng Alert Level 1 sa 53 LGUs, nakita po natin na lalong buwaba din ang mga areas under granular lockdown. Nakita po na siyam na city or municipality o binubuo ng 24 na barangays lamang ang nagpapatupad ng granular lockdown. At ito po ay 37. Nakita po natin na ang Metro Manila ang may pinakamarami, 31, at 2 naman sa NCR. Dalawa po sa NCR, 31 po sa CAR, at 4 sa Region 1. All the rest ay wala na po. So ito ay nakaka-apekto sa 37 households at 47 individuals. In-expect po natin na lalo pang bababa yung mga areas na ito. At nagkaroon po tayo ng assessment sa pagpapatupad ng Alert Level 1. Unang-una po, nagkaroon tayo ng pulong sa mga NCR mayors kagabi. At napag-alaman po natin na maganda po ang ating assessment sa first week ng implementation ng ating Alert Level 1. Patuloy pa rin bumababa ang mga numero ng cases, pero ang bunga naman ito ay tumaas ang ating mobility, kaya unti-unti namang nararamdaman ang mas nagiging traffic na po sa mga areas na to. At nakita rin po namin na binabantayan natin yung mga focus crimes. Medyo tumaas ang index crime, particularly physical injuries at saka theft. At ito ay napansin natin sa mga business establishment na malalapit sa malls. Kaya naman mas marami pang pulis ang ating i-deploy bilang pang paghahanda at maging deterrent sa mga criminals. At nagsasagawa na rin po tayo ng paghahanda para sa 4th National Vaccination Days. So pinulong na rin natin ang mga LGUs, ang mga governors, ang mga mayors at ang barangay captains. Kaya ready na po tayo rito para mas lalo pang madagdagan ang ating mabakunahan. Lalo-lalo na ang mga natitirang seniors, ang mga kailangang mabigyan ng boosters, at pati po ang mga bata, particularly ang 17 years old and below. Next slide, please. Dito naman po, Mr. President, makikita natin yung pagpapatupad ng mga community health protocols. Ang ating mga violations sa hindi pagsusot ng mask ay bumaba ng 25.36%. So ibig sabihin po ay talagang sumusunod naman ang ating mga kababayan. Medyo tumaas lang ang conduct ng mass gathering, pero bumaba din naman ang no physical distancing ng 29.14%. Patuloy po nating ipapatupad ang minimum public health standard kasama ang LGUs at ang mga law enforcement para siguradong mabantayan natin na wala nang magkakaroong spike pa sa susunod na mga araw. Next slide. At ito naman sa aking huling ulat, Mr. President, ito po yung ating kinakonduct ng mga anti-illegal drug operations during the pandemic. Makita po natin na nakapagsagawa tayo ng 916 anti-illegal drug operations. Nakapag-aresto tayo ng mga 1,307 na violators. Meron pong 76 na nag-surrender at isa naman ang nasawi sa ating mga police operations. Pero gusto pong ipakita, Mr. President, ay ang biglang paglaki ng ating mga nasamsam na mga illegal drugs. Ito pa ay umabot sa 424,747,925 pesos. Almost kalahating bilyon po. Ikumpara natin po last week na ito ay 159 million lang. So ito po ay maaaring bunga na din ng pagluluwag natin, nagkaroon ng mobility, kumilo sa mga tao at pwedeng samantalahin po ng mga illegal drug traders. Lalo pa na ipaigtingin ng ating mga operation para siguradong hindi mapagsamantalahan ng mga illegal drug operators ang ating pagbaba ng kaso at pagluluwag sa alert level 1. Yan lamang po, Mr. President. Maraming salamat po.
Well, anyway, Art, Secretary Tugade, medyo pa-relax ka dyan. I would like to remind you of the projects that I would like to be also participating para makita ng tao yung yung nagawa mo para sa Pilipinas. If you have the time, kindly get me your yung schedule mo para makasama ako. I'd be happy to join you sa nagawa mo para sa bayan. Well, anyway.
Salamat po, Mr. President.
Sige.
Naririnig po ba ako?
Clear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor President. Una po, yung rekomendasyon ng DOTR kasama po sa report na naihayag ni Secretary Carl kanina. Ito po yung tatlong bahagi na kung saan sinasabi namin i-release na po yung fuel subsidy na nagkakahalaga ng 2.5 billion. Ito po ang isang proyektong katuwang at kasama namin ang Department of Energy at Department of Budget. Nakikiusap din ho kami na yung service contracting ay i-release na ho yung pondo na nakakahalaga sa 7 million na nakakapaloob ho sa budget ng 2022. Ito ho'y provided na sa budget, kung marirelease ho ito ho'y magbubunga ng tinatawag natin na libreng sakay. Sabihin ko lang ho at this time, yung libreng sakay po last year, ang nakinabang ho dyan, 100,000 mga drivers at mga operator. Pero ang malaga ho dyan, ang nakinabang na ridership is 7.2 million. Ang ibig sabihin, talagang pangmalawakan ng pakinabang na ito. Ito ho ay napaloob sa report ni Secretary Carl kanina. Doon ho sa mga project, maraming salamat po Mr. President. Talaga hong inaasahan ng ating mga kababayan ang iyong participation upang sa ganyan malaman at malaman nila yung mga ginagawa ng iyong administrasyon. 3 proyekto ho ang akin i-remind ho sana kung pwede sumama kayo. Una po, yung MRT3 inauguration. Ito ho, kung pwede natin gawin ho ito, natapos na ho yung rehabilitation, full rehabilitation ng MRT3 na kung saan talagang mapapalakas na ho natin yung tinatawag na capacity. Pwede na nating abutin from 200,000, pwede nating abutin 400 hanggang 600,000 per day. Ito ho, dati ho, nung nagumpisa kayo, puro aberya ang inabot natin. Katakot-takot na insulto ang inabot ko dyan. Pero itong mga nakaraan, even sa pandemya, wala hong glitches. Kaya kung makakasama po kayo sa inauguration at acceptance ng MRT3 full rehabilitation completion, maganda po yan. Pangalawa ho, yung sinabi ko noong nakaraang meeting, ito ho yung kaakibat ng Bicol Express na kung saan handa na po yung tren gumalaw from Lucena to San Pablo. Ito ho, matagal na nabinbin ang tren dyan, 5 taon. Ito'y pwede na nating gawin ho yan. Ito ho, kadugtong ito ng Bicol Express. Imagine, meron na ho tayo sa Bicol ng Bicol International Airport. Meron ka pang Bicol Express sa Riles. Hindi ho masasabi ng ating mga kaibigan, kababayan sa Bicol na sila'y pinabayaan. Mas bale, binigyan ho sila ng atensyon. Meron ho mga puertong kailangan nating inaugurate. Nabanggit ko ho, yung sa Ilocos Norte, na handa nang inaugurate ito ho yung cruise vessels. Meron din ho yung mga puerto sa Samar, sa Eastern Samar. Nakikipag-ugnayan ho ako sa OP nang sa ganon, ma-reconcile ho yung mga schedule. Tama ho kayo, Mr. Mayor, tama lang, malaman ng ating mga kababayan yung mga ginagawa sa Riles, sa kalsada, sa aviation, saka sa maritime. Yun lang po, Mr. President.
Yung pag-inaugurate mo doon sa Samar, Art, huwag mo kalimutan na imbitahin yung mga NPA. Walang ginawa kung mag-ambos sa sundalo ko. Yayain mo na lang para ako na ang nagyaya. Magkita na lang tayo doon. Walang hulihan. Kasali kay lahat, pati sa kainan.
Will comply, Mayor. Will comply.
One day, respite from fighting. Wala na ginawa itong hindi Samar, ang rami pa rin.
Alam niyo ho, Mr. President, let's walk memory lane. Yung sa completion ng Bicol International Airport, 2 sabotahe inabot ko dyan, 2 sunog. Pero natapos naman natin.
Ayun nga, sabagay. Basta nalaman ng bayan na ginagawa namin lahat ang makakaya namin gawin. Yun lang. Hindi naman kami sabihin na gagawin namin lahat. Basta yung hanggang kaya lang namin sa mga utak sa mga tao dito na nakikita ninyo. So, wala namang I cannot invite you nandyan sa panel. Kung wala kayong pagkain, pasensya na kayo. Dapat nag-sandwich na kayo. Kasi kakain kami dito. Pochero.
Kagaya ng FDA, kakain na rin ako.
Sige. Mga kababayan ko, hanggang dito lang muna. Hindi na ako I have many things to really to convey to you, but pahuli na natin. Pati itong gera ng between Russia and Ukraine. Hindi namin ito sinasabi kung ano, not so that hindi maalarma yung tao. Pero pinakadelikado ito ngayong nangyayari. Kasi pag may nagkamali dito, pag nabitawan yung mga nuclear warheads, problema talaga. Problema na. At saka baski ngayon nag-umpisa na tayo. Remember, oil. Oil is, alam mo, aywan ko kung paano ginawa ang Diyos ng itong mundo. Kasi yung mga kapitbahay natin, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, may mga oil sila. Tayo, mayroon pa kukunti lang, not enough even to serve a region o 3-4 regions. Ang mayroon tayo gas. Pero yan ang bantayan natin because there is a potential trouble there regarding how we would handle it. Pero ang sinasabi ko lang, at sabihin ko na mabuti pa, marami kasing pumapasok dyan ng mga kontratista. Ay, hindi ko alam kung sino yung gustong umagaw o sinong gustong papalit. Pero merong haka-haka na mayroong bagong kumpanya na sila na mag-take over kasi nandyan na. Alam mo, pinaalaala sa akin, hindi ko na sabihin kung sino, from China, sabi niya, di ba may usapan tayo na joint development yung sa Recto Bank. May bagong mga istorya na may papalit na ganun. Alam mo, I can only talk for this time that we are here, administrasyon ko. Bilungan ako ng na huwag ganun. Yung original contracts natin, sundin natin. Ngayon, sabi magpadala ng sundalo. Sabi ko, wala man kami sinabing padala sundalo. Sabi niya, just in case, magpadala kayo ng sundalo, magpadala rin kami ng sundalo. So, alam mo, yan ang iniiwasan ko noon pa eh. Tapos magkagera tuloy tayo dito, nandoon sa Ukraine, nandyan yung Taiwan, gustong agawin uli ng China. Tapos dito, so many flashpoints. Maraming lugar na may putok. We do not need it. Hindi natin kailangan makipag-away dyan. Sundin lang ninyo kung ano yung pinag-usapan noon. Honor yan eh. It's a matter of honor. We gave our consensual talks. Tapos may written agreement. Pag iniba yan, delikado. So, hindi na mangyari sa akin yan kasi ayaw ko. Ayaw kong ibahin. Kasi yun ang pinag-usapan namin sa panahon ko. Yun lang, just to remind everybody to stay cool, to chill ka lang. It's not our generation na masosolve natin itong problema sa China. I don't know what the future holds, but I said at this time, relax lang tayo. That's my advice. Para sa lahat, irrespective of now or tomorrow, huwag lang natin, do not tempt the gods and look for trouble that we cannot maybe handle o mahirapan tayo. Salamat sa inyong lahat.